Hi, folks. Welcome to Anatomy and Physiology on Demand. And in this talk, we are going to learn about the microstructure of compact bone, specifically something called the osteon. So when you look at a bone and you cut it, we already talked before about how the outer part of the bone looks pretty solid, and that's compact bone. But when we look at it under the microscope, we also learned that it looks like a bunch of tree trunks cut in half. So that is the osteon, whose microanatomy we're going to learn about right now. So there are two different models for osteon. The one on the left will always be on the left on your pictures. And what that is the view of one osteon. And so you can see in this one, the rings of the tree trunk are alternating between a light blue and a yellow color. In contrast to that, the one on the right is actually an entire wedge going through this compact bone area, so that you can see multiple osteons. So over here on the left side, that would be the outer part of the bone. And then here's an osteon. They've pulled it upwards, so it looks kind of like a wedding cake. But if you look at the top right picture, that's looking at it from above, so you can clearly see the concentric circles of the osteon there as well. So going all the way from this area down to this area, that would be one osteon. And each specific ring in an osteon is called a lamella. And so I've put little brackets surrounding a lamella for each of the pictures. In the center of every osteon, there is a hollow space. You can see here with the red arrow pointing to this black area. That black area corresponds to this area, which is vertical. It goes the entire length of the osteon. And in the far left picture, you can see there actually are multiple structures there. So that space in the center of the osteon is called the central canal. It's called a canal because it goes through solid bone. In that central canal, we have blood vessels. The big model on the right is only showing a red blood vessel, whereas the one on the left is showing both a red and a blue blood vessel. You just get to call them blood vessels for now. In addition, there are going to be nerves that travel through the central canal, and that is this white structure on the left. So now let's go back and look at the osteon lamellae, and what you will notice is between the lamellae, not in the lamella, but between them, we have these spaces, okay? And each of these spaces is called the lacuna. This is the space that I talked about before that the cells of the bone are located in, where I said, like, you know, when I talked about cartilage, I said the same thing, where there's spaces that surround the cells. So each of these spaces is called a lacuna. Okay. And so the models show the spaces various different ways. So here you can see they're hollow. All the ones I have pointed out right now, you clearly can see that they're showing hollow spaces. But if you recall, there are supposed to be cells in them. And so the name of the cells that are occupying them in bone, we're going to take the root that means bone, which is os, take the suffix that means cell, which is site. So these are all osteocytes. Okay. So starting with the far right one, the hollow spaces with lamella, so these whitish things, that is showing the osteocyte. So on the bottom picture, far right, we are seeing the spaces, lacuna. The middle section, we can see the white osteocytes. On the left, they have actually painted the osteocytes to look dark, and you can see they kind of look spidery because they have these little processes, which we'll see later on in a close-up picture. On the far left, what we have going on is this black area, this dark blue, that is the cell here. Here was the empty lacuna, and the blue is indicating that there's a cell in the lacuna. Okay. Now, the osteocytes have these little projections that go into little cracks between, that go throughout the lamella. So let me say that again. If we look at the lamella, so stick at the one on the left, on this blue one, you can see these red lines, okay? And the red lines are going to be connecting through lamella so that this osteocyte can send a process through this little crack, which is going to meet up with a process coming from that osteocyte. So all these little lines here are the same thing as all these tiny little shorter lines, which you can see coming off here. And what these are little tiny microscopic cracks going through the bones, so little microscopic canals, or what's known as a canaliculus. You will learn more about those in lecture as well. So I want to show the outside of the osteon, the model that was on the left. If you look what's going on here, you can kind of see all one color what was going on. This is a hollow space. So this is the lacuna. And you can kind of see the cracks connecting between one lacuna and the adjacent lacuna. So all of these little lines here would be the canaliculi. Over here, they have colorized stuff. And so the red is indicating the same thing that is here. The red is indicating the actual lacuna, and then the red linear structures are indicating the canaliculi. Whereas in the middle of the red, we have the blue structure, and the blue structure is the cell, the osteocyte. Okay, so if you need to, go back to the previous slide, previous two slides, and repeat all this just to make sure you can tell the difference between the lacuna, the osteocyte, and the canaliculus. Okay, now for the next structures, that one little osteon model doesn't show it, so we have to look at the entire wedge thing. And as I said, on the left of the wedge was the outer part of the bone, and on the outer part of all of our bones, we have some dense connective tissue that goes around the bone. So we're going to take the prefix that means around, which is peri, and we're going to take os for bone. So that dense connective tissue that surrounds the bone is called the periosteum, and that is what is being shown here, where we have the arrow. I think you can see that there's two layers of it here. There are two layers. We will learn about them in lecture, but for lab, I'm not going to have you learn about the two layers. But what I do want you to notice is coming from the periosteum, you see these white lines which are going into and through some of the lamella of the closest osteons. Okay, so each of those is called a Sharpie fiber or a perforating fiber. Okay. And what these are is these are pieces of dense connective tissue that actually are in the bone. And so what that means is it's not like putting a pillowcase around the bone where they are separate. It's like they are super glued together. It's like Velcro. And if you pull the periosteum off the bone, you hear that just like you're pulling Velcro apart because you have to tear all these Sharpie fibers. So that's what's making the two adhere to each other. And so you will find out in lecture the whole importance of the periosteum for that bone health and formation. All right. The next thing I want to point out are these red things, which are blood vessels that are in spaces. So previously we talked about the ones that were going the length of the osteon, and those were the central canals. So these are perpendicular to them. They're coming like through the shaft, and then blood vessels are going to branch and go up and down in all these various central canals. So anything that is running perpendicular, here's the central canal. Anything that's semi-perpendicular to it is going to be called a perforating canal. And those are called perforating blood vessels that are in the perforating canals. Okay, and that's it for the osteons. I want to thank you again for all your hard work, and hopefully I will see you in class soon.